Meet David Fannin. In 2005, he launched his first ever product on Amazon.com.
Direct to consumer is the way it's going, and that is what consumers want. They want to be dealing with the brand directly. That's my belief.
By the end of the year, he'd made just £5,000 in revenue.
I nearly threw in the towel at one stage thinking, this is the most stressful thing I've ever done.
He knew something had to change, so he got to work. He experimented with various marketing channels, adopted new and groundbreaking strategies, and even appeared on Dragon's Den.
But you have to keep thinking what's ended at the end of this, that potentially if this comes off, this is going to be life-changing. So you persevere.
In a few short years, David's hard work had paid off.
I've had a lot of bad luck over the years, highs and lows in this business. And I think I had the first bit of luck there when I sold that business. I just happened to latch onto this at the right time. Didn't get too greedy. I thought, there's only so much money you need. And it was, for me, it was life-changing.
The business was making more than 7 figures in annual revenue. And in today's episode of the podcast, we want to explore how you can do the same.
You need to keep busy. I think I'm an ideas person.
We'll be talking to David about the unique strategies he employed to scale his business without a dedicated marketing team.
And I want to help other entrepreneurs.
We'll also be taking a look at his approach to product design and development, how it helped him to stand out, and what's next for the former founder who's just sold his business in an exit that's not what he thought it would be. Can you walk us through the journey, why you decided to sell, and the experience been kind of in that process and in the time since?
Yeah, well, initially there was no plan to sell the business when I did sell it. We had a lot of products in the scale in the business over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. But I started to get approached, initially by one Amazon aggregator, as they're known. And I sort of, at the time we were coming into our busy season, and I said, contact me at the end of the summer and we can sort of explore it further. So it sort of got me a little bit interested in that whole Amazon aggregator area, which I wasn't familiar with. So I sort of did a bit of digging around on the internet and found obviously other businesses similar to the business that approached me. And it's quite straightforward. You just put in your Amazon webpage and put in some of your figures, and they come back and say if they're interested or not. So that's really how what got the ball rolling. And when I started to get some that interest in the business, I thought, well, I'm going to explore this further to see what actually is the business worth, and if it's worth selling, and whether or not I was going to be interested if the figures would allow me to move on and do something completely different and even look to retire. So I didn't think it was going to be at the level that it would be. So that's what got me interested initially in it.
Okay, and then I know we're going to dig into this more later, but can you just talk through kind of what happened next? Because I know you ended up running a process, right, and then exiting down the line.
There was 4 companies that I sort of approached. There may have been a few others. Maybe there was half a dozen, but there was 4 that had came back and started to look into the figures. And I had 4 offers on the table relatively quickly. I would say within a month or two. And I thought, okay, well, these are life-changing figures. What got me sort of exploring a little bit further to see if there was potential to, if anyone else might be interested, was I had a broker approach me from, I think it was Switzerland at the time. That's where he was based. And it was quite a high percentage that he wanted, but I started to then look at Amazon aggregator brokers. This is where I found the broker that I finally went with in the end. And I had told him that I had these offers on the table, which he was, he thought they were very good offers, but he was confident he could take it to the next level. So, and that's what I decided to do. I went with this particular broker and ended up with 10 offers on the table, which, and he substantially increased the offers that I had on the table at the time.
Plug, that is Tal, who's also been on the podcast from Handback, right?
That's right. Yeah. And he made the whole process very straightforward. He literally, I spent a few hours chatting to him and his team, telling them all about the business, my background, and sort of selling the dream. And he sort of took all the figures and packaged it all together, and then reached out to his network, and we went from there. But yeah, I think because I already had 4 very good offers on the table, I was able to negotiate a good percentage with Tal. So it worked. It was a win-win for both of us.
And I do want to get into that more later, but I want to now go back to the start. First off, can you just kind of explain, Collapse the business, what it is you guys were doing, and what the business looked like?
Yeah, so initially we started in the gardening world, the gardening sector. So we had developed the very first product was a collapsible water buck, which basically holds. It would hold 200 litres of water. So it was a very big product. It was quite expensive. It was £150 retail, nicely packaged in a big colour box. The trade, the retailers loved the idea, but actually in reality trying to sell that to the consumer was a different ball game altogether. So at the same time we were thinking about a collapsible watering can. So I had worked in the gardening for a company in the gardening industry previously, so that was where I understood and where I was focusing. And obviously with a watering can you're thinking push that into the gardening world. And we had some very good sales. We probably in the space of a couple of years had sold about 150,000 units. And but the big thing there was that we weren't getting the repeat orders. So we got those initial large orders, but weren't getting the repeat orders. And then that's we actually went on to a TV program called Dragon's Den, and we started to think about the camping world because everything's when you're camping, space is a premium. Whether you're packing everything up and everything needs to be light and convenient. So we decided let's go on to Dragon's Den and see where that sort of takes us, and that opened us up to the camping world, and that was really where the business started to take off when we started to focus on the camping world.
Okay, I just want to talk about product design now. So firstly, did you come up with the kind of idea of the the collapsible stuff and then go and create it yourself or work with a team, or what did that process look like?
Yeah, so I've got the business which is called SourceIt. We develop products for other clients, and I have travelled to the Far East, but mainly China, for a number of years, going to the big trade shows over there, and I would always be looking for ideas. I'm a product designer myself, so I'd always be looking for ideas, not necessarily for myself or for the business, but for the clients to see if I could expand their product range. And I came across this material this one year, and I had some idea. I thought I could see potential in this material where no one else was doing it. So that's where I had made a few samples, and it was 2010 when we actually went to our first garden trade show, the NEC, and it was with the Waterbus, where we won 3 awards there. It was like best product at show, best eco product. There was a number of awards we had won for that. So I thought, we had put some, I had a team of designers at the time as well. So I'm an ideas person, I'm a product designer, but I'm more pen to paper, where the sort of younger designers coming through now are very good on computer and CAD and that. So I had guys who obviously put those ideas, create those ideas, and we went from there. So
Okay.
but everything we did was all about looking to protect the designs that were through patents. So we were patent pending on what we were doing. Even with the water bus, we had patent pending on that. So it gave us something there to protect us.
And in terms of that ideation, were you seeing a material and then kind of trying to come up with products that you could use it for, like the water butt, or was it kind of a different process?
It was. I could see a material which was interesting, which had a lot of potential, and I thought if I could come up with some products that could save space and look good at the same time, for me. I'm always been making things look good, but performing well at the same time. So that's where the company I started to work with had a number of collapsible products, but They didn't look good. They were more functional, and I actually tried to arrange a partnership there. So I was their design team, and they were manufacturer, but I couldn't get them to sign any exclusive agreement. So I decided to sort of step away from that, and thought, well, I will do this myself. And I actually worked with another manufacturer. It's hard to find manufacturers making it in this material. I found another manufacturer who used to be the production manager at that factory. So it was a bit of a sort of needle in a haystack, but I started to work with him. That's where it all began in terms of the manufacturing side of things.
Okay, and did you test any other ideas, or was it kind of, the water butt was first, kind of worked right out the gate, and then you moved into the garden, the camping space as well?
It was the water butt, and then very quickly we focused on the watering can, because that was where we were getting orders, large orders. And then from there we started, as I say, to think about the camp, like a water carrier and the camping world. And that's where we, as I say, we went on to Dragon's Den, and it was all around, everything was based around that material. Obviously we moved into other products and materials after that, but it all started around that particular material.
Okay, and your background, obviously you've from the UK, you've got experience in Ireland, a lot of stuff you've done in China as well with kind of the product sourcing side of things. How did that kind of experience help you in this journey, especially at the start?
Well, obviously, anyone who's got an idea, they don't necessarily know where to start when it comes to manufacturing. And I would say that because of my background of dealing with China, and I started dealing with China from 1998, so I had a good idea where I was going to get things produced, and the price, the quality, exactly what I want in terms of protecting the idea. I wasn't going in there sort of thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to work with this manufacturer. Can I trust them with my idea? Can I trust them with the quality, with the lead times, everything? I knew I had the experience there, built up over the years, working for people who dealt with China, and then doing it myself from, I set up Sourceit in 2005. So I developed a lot of experience there with China. So it put me in a good position when I was developing the products and expanding the range.
I just want to touch on Sourceit then briefly. So, this was a business that you set up previously. You still run it today. Can you just talk through the kind of journey that you've had and what it is you've done for clients there?
Yeah, so initially it was set up, I had a silent business partner, and he knew I had the experience with China, so he sort of initially funded that business. We actually tried to develop our own range of decorative bird houses and bird feeders. And at the same time, I was going to trade shows, looking to see if I could help people source in China. And it was that side of things that started to take off. It was a positive cash flow, because if a deposit was due, they would pay me, I would pay the manufacturer. Whereas the birdhouse business was consuming cash. I needed stock, I needed to do consumer shows, trade shows. That was consuming a lot of cash. So I think within 18 months we dropped that side of the business, and we were proceeded with the sourcing. And the clients ranged from, they tended to be smaller businesses, some of them startup businesses, but baby, pet, garden, novelty. We did a lot of novelty gifts, and most of those businesses grew and still exist today and are very substantial businesses. So they got to a stage where they could bring in their own sourcing team, and that's how. And that made me always want to have my own product and own brand, which I could be in control of and no one could take away from me. So that was always the goal. But I knew it was going to take some time, and I used the Sourceit side of the business to help fund that. Okay,
interesting. So it's kind of like the the relationships, know-how, and capital from that you then use to build up the brand.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question is kind of going back to what we were talking about before this. So you talked about how you went onto the watering can, and one of the reasons for that was initial customer feedback. How important is customer feedback in product development and in that cycle? And how do you get kind of that feedback through the door?
So for us, the customer was the key, I think, to our success. It's one thing having an idea, but you need to know if it's going to work, if it's going to sell. And Collapse. We focused in the end on the camping industry, and that's I own a tent, and that's how I do go camping. So it was an area which I had an interest in. I would go camping with the customers. I would go to the consumer shows, which for me was very important, because you would go there, you would meet new customers, you'd meet influencers, and you'd pick up, as you were sort of demonstrating the products, you would pick up a lot of feedback, good and bad, in terms of the products that we had, and get ideas for new products. So that was vital for growing the business. So we would go camping with them, present ideas, and sometimes we would present a number of ideas, and some got rejected, and some we would press ahead with and take to market. So based on that positive feedback.
Okay, and I want to talk now on the marketing side of things. So you talked about trade shows. What other key channels were you focused on initially to get that product in front of customers or potential customers?
So, the trade shows we started to do initially, and I'll be perfectly honest, the reason why we went down the trade shows was to pick up distributors to sell our products, because it was that sourced model where the distributor would buy the stock, pay us for that, we pay the factory, it was a positive cash flow. But we, in the end, decided to sort of go direct to consumer ourselves, and it was the consumer shows were important, engaging with that community through influencers. We also started to work with Kickstarter. We did a Kickstarter campaign, which again was direct to consumer. But what that did as well was open up the other markets. So particularly the product we had we launched at that time had chopsticks on it, so that gained interest from the Asian market, and opened up that whole market with the rest of the products that we had to offer.
And on Kickstarter, can you just talk briefly about what you guys did on the platform?
So in terms of the product?
Yeah, what did you do on Kickstarter? Like, how was that process for you, and what was the end result?
Right. Okay, so we had looked at this platform before, because we've seen a lot of successful products on there. We actually tried the water carrier and went with a business that said no win, no fee. And very quickly after it sort of launched, there was no traction at all. So we sort of parked that and thought, okay, that hasn't worked. And you need an audience to drive that traction. So I happened to come across a guy who approached me to develop a product for him and produce it for him, who had already a couple of very successful campaigns himself. So I decided to sort of work with him on developing a product, which we had, and it was called a 7-in-1 cutlery set. So knife, fork, there was a steak knife, there was chopsticks, there was tongs, salad tongs. It was a 7-in-1. It was a cool looking product. So, but he had the contacts. He had, like, the marketing was done through a company in Israel. The distribution was done in China, where obviously we were producing the product. So it went to a warehouse in China, and all the sort of back end of it was fulfilled through another platform, which again he introduced us to. So, and we raised quite a substantial amount of money from that, and add-on orders after that as we began to fulfill them. So yeah, so that's what we did. And that was, I suppose, like a year into our Amazon sale. So we had started having some Amazon traction, and then it was opening up to other opportunities around the world too.
Okay, and so the purpose of the Kickstarter, was it for capital? Was it to kind of get hype around the brand, or was there another reason?
It was really a marketing exercise, but we knew that whatever we would put into it, we would get something out of it too. But not, we raised 100,000 from it, but we made some profit out of that, but not as much as people would necessarily think. The whole purpose was to as a marketing exercise. What I would say is, very quickly, because Kickstarter is a platform that a lot of people look on, and especially the Chinese, very quickly our images were being used on Amazon around the world. And people were selling this product, even though they didn't have the product, but they were putting it on Amazon. And because we had intellectual property in place with Amazon, we were, within a couple of weeks, we were taking all these listings down. We could take them down because we had the intellectual property in place.
Okay, that's really interesting, and I want to talk
Yeah.
about Amazon later, because I know, this is a big problem for a lot of people, right? Is fake sellers of their products and using their IP.
Yeah.
And often they're not as well protected as it sounds like you guys were.
Yeah, we were actually on a thing called transparency with Amazon. So we had unique barcodes, special barcodes that, unless that product had that barcode on there, it couldn't be sold on Amazon. And because we were part of that whole system with Amazon, that allowed us to take all these other listings down.
Okay. Going back to the kind of the marketing and the kind of journey, you mentioned earlier about your appearance on Dragon's Den. How did that come about? What was it like, and how did it influence the kind of growth of the business?
Yeah, so I've probably watched every episode since that started, so I've always been a big fan of it. And I've always felt for the guys going on there presenting their ideas, thinking, and always wondered what it would be like and what they go through. So this one year I decided to apply just to see if I would get a response, and I got a call out of the blue, probably within a month or two, from a researcher, and it went from there. So there's a number of stages you go through. It's quite intense because you have to create a business plan. You go up to the BBC studio, you do a dummy recording. They assess whether it's going to, I suppose, make good TV. And so we went through that whole process, and then we got selected to go in front of the Dragons. I think there was 10 of us on the day, and that was, if we just give you an idea on the timings, that was about 6 months after the initial call. So that we were in there in the sort of summer, and we were the first on to go in front of the Dragons. I sort of was down the day before and said, listen, we've got a big setup, can we get in front of the Dragons first of all, so we settle the nerves, so we know what order we're going to be in. And we were in for an hour and a half, and there was a lot of prep work going on before, filming beforehand, going into the lift, out of the lift, Sean, who was working with me at the time, he forgot some of his words, so that made it quite challenging and interesting for TV. But we didn't get investment. I'll be honest, we didn't expect investment because the business had still owed the original silent partner some money, and he, as part of an arrangement I had with him, he had the intellectual property of Collapse. Obviously that's the Dragons, like to be honest, like a nice clean business. We were done within an hour and a half, and within 10 minutes we were driving down the motorway again. And from that, 2 of us got selected out of the 10 to go onto TV. We didn't find out until December of that year, and we were on in February the year after. And it was literally February 10 years ago. So that's how long ago it is now. The time flies. We had a lot of interest from the caravan and camping world because of the watering can we had on there. We didn't realise that caravanners and motorhomes use a watering can to top up water tanks and the toilet tank. So the fact that it collapsed and was lightweight was a big bonus. That was one of our strongest selling products when we finally sold the business, was the collapsible watering can, which we had initially developed for the gardening world.
So did that appearance on the show lead to that kind of spreading of awareness, I guess? Yeah,
100%. Spreading of awareness of the brand, and opening us up to the potential of that market, and especially with that watering can. And at the same time, obviously, we because we had mentioned Source It and that got televised, so we started getting interest from people who had ideas to develop as well. So it was a win-win for us, and worth going through the pain.
Okay. So, but definitely worth it and a net positive, right?
100%. Yeah, I would do it again with another product. I'd recommend doing it. Yeah.
Okay. Final question on this: favorite and least favorite dragon.
My favourite's always been Peter Jones, and I just think he's got a lot of experience there. I think he's like a gentle giant behind it all. And I would say my least favourite, well, at the time, Duncan Bannatyne was in there. He's probably my least favourite at the time. He asked some awkward questions.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on those two.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to talk now about kind of all the different opportunities and channels that you guys have pursued. So I run an agency, and we work with a lot of brands, and it seems like they're often trying to follow and force the same kind of rule book. So typically now, it's Facebook ads, churn out a lot of content, scale on Facebook, push that traffic to your Shopify site. It seems like, you had a very different approach where you're trying a lot of different things. My question here is, how do you decide which opportunities to pursue, which ones are working, and which ones you should kind of leave behind?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because we had a lot of highs and lows along the way. We were quite persistent in trying to make the distributor model work for us, purely from the reasons I've explained already. Getting them to fund the stock. At the same time, we were putting our toe in direct to consumer ourselves off the back of the stock that the distributors were ordering, and we invested some money with an SEO company. We were getting some traction there, not substantial sales, but we were getting some traction there. And it wasn't until I knew Amazon was an area we needed to explore. And my wife started to look at that. She was the one sort of setting that side of things up, and she started to explore that. And I actually, I'm connected to a few people on LinkedIn, and I noticed I followed one guy, and I noticed him talking about selling on Amazon and an agency he was looking to use. And so I just thought, well, we're trying to grow Amazon, maybe he can point me in the right direction. And he actually put me in touch with a guy who he just worked for himself. He understood Amazon, and I decided to give that guy a trial for 6 months. And it was that opened up my eyes to the potential on Amazon. So very quickly we switched off SEO and put that money into the Amazon guy, and he gave us the confidence to actually. It wasn't working with the distributors, so we ended up buying back the distributor stock to fulfill the orders that he was generating for us on Amazon. And then we got to a point, it's like, okay, well, we've generated that amount, let's now buy our own stock. We know exactly what we want. He was forecasting the orders. We were buying our own stock then to bring straight into our own warehouse. That's how we sort of started to get into the Amazon model. And at the same time, we decided to do the key consumer shows and engaging with the community and the influencers, and really pushing that, putting some money into that, engaging with the community, direct to consumer, and that was driving sales on our own website as well, which was paying off as opposed to the SEO. And ultimately, the distributors, the right distributors and partners, started coming to us asking to distribute the product as well. So we could pick who was the right partner, let them have certain products that we thought, okay, well, you could run with those products. And we actually kept them off Amazon. We focused on Amazon ourselves, again, through this transparency model thing. We said you can sell it through the brick and mortar stores and other online retailers, but not Amazon. And that's how we managed it in the end.
Okay, so it's very much a case of, and going back to that initial question, it's trying a bunch of different strategies, figuring out where the ROI is and kind of doubling down on that, and then optimizing for, I guess, profit in your business and making decisions around that rather than trying to shift as much volume as possible in models that might not necessarily pay off for you guys long term.
Yeah, it would have been very easy to just say, okay, well, Amazon's working, we'll just focus on Amazon. But we felt that you never knew with Amazon when things might change. So we wanted to spread that risk, and that's why it was important to grow the sales on our own website. And then with distributors, it was important for us to bring those into the equation because we actually thought that potentially one of these distributors may want to buy the business. So that was the reason why we thought, okay, well, let's keep that one going as well. And it just de-risks the whole thing as opposed to, and that was what appealed to the aggregators when we were presenting to them, was the fact that we were not just an Amazon business. We were selling through our own website, we were selling through distributors and making very good margins through the distributors. And those distributors who were financing all the orders we weren't financing, they couldn't believe that actually it was all being financed by the distributors as well. So, and they liked the fact that we were spread around the world as well, not just in the UK.
Okay. I want to talk now about Amazon. So you've kind of, at its peak, scaled this business to 7 figures in revenue. And I think 80% of that was coming from Amazon. What advice do you have for brands that are trying to build, a strong Amazon presence? How can they do that?
Well, I would, for us, what was important was having unique product. I think there's a lot of products out there where people will, and I had it through Salsa clients. There was one guy who wanted to develop an eco brand, and he's great as photography, the website, nice brand name, but he was just taking existing products, different colors, putting his brand name on there. But the guy who handled my Amazon sales, he tried to make it work, but he said it's very difficult. It's a crowded market, and you haven't got a unique product. So for one thing I've learned from him, and is that you need unique product, and I would say not just one product. Maybe you want one or two hero product, but you need those other products around you, so it's going to build that brand awareness and grow that basket as well. For me, it's not just about one product. It's about having multiple products under that umbrella, which obviously you can manage, but. Yeah, I would say as having unique product, which have got intellectual property on, very strong photography, which was important for us. The videos we had paid for professional videos. All of that is important, and having that Amazon web page so it looks professional when people are landing on your listings. So yeah.
It sounds like that's all about kind of creating a premium price point. Is that fair? And is it the case that, if you're not got a unique product, you've not got, great photography, it's kind of a race for the bottom in this like commoditized mass world of Amazon? Is that true?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, I know you need, the other thing that, again, I learned from the Amazon guy that we used was, you want products that are sort of 30, 40, 50 pound plus. So there's margin in there. If you're at £10, we actually had another brand we tried to do. It was a printed posters. You've probably seen them, scratch posters, and £10, and we were really the first people in there doing this scratch poster. But there was very little profit out of it. So and then others, it was very easy to copy. So even though our poster was unique, it was so difficult to make some money out of it. So we decided, right, let's focus on Collapse. Yes, it's nice to have this other brand over here, but it's not making money. We need products that are going to sort of, are unique, difficult to copy. That's important. It's difficult to copy, and our products were difficult to copy. And I did that. It wasn't just down to the investment in tooling, but it was how we manufactured in China as well through several partners. Yeah, that's what I would say in terms of anyone who's looking to launch something on Amazon. Make it a product difficult to copy, have intellectual property, and aim high in terms of retail as opposed to the lower end.
Okay. talking about building a moat now. You talked before about, the intellectual property and how you protected that. How, like, what role did that play in the business, and what was the process for going about what you guys did with that?
Well, initially, the intellectual property can be very expensive, especially when you're looking at things like a patent. And we learned that quite quickly when we were doing the water bus. We actually applied for an international patent, and then, so you have those initial fees. But then if you want to, you get so long to then decide which countries you want to actually protect it in, and that's when it gets very expensive. So I'll be perfectly honest, with the water butt, we didn't take it any further. But with the watering can, we decided in the end just to protect in the UK, and we got patent granted there because in the UK there's a thing called Patent Box, and that gives you tax savings when it comes to the corporation tax on the sales on those on that particular product. So there was advantages there. So that's what we decided to do. But to the general public, they see a patent granted on something like that. They're not necessarily, most people look at that and think, okay, it's got a patent on it, let's stay away from that. That was one thing. But with any products we did design registration, so the look of it. Sometimes we would actually put a patent application in initially, which is not a huge cost. So we would do that initially just to deter people as well. The big thing that we did protect was the trademark, the Collapse trademark, and we protected that in like China, Japan, America, Europe, UK, the main markets. We protected that trademark, and we also protected, and I secured the trademark, the domain names. So collapse.cn and collapse.com, all of the trademarks, domains around the world. So it was that I was just thinking about, if I come to sell this one day, I've got everything there secured so that people can decide what they want to take forward or not. And I even had different spellings of Collapse protected as domain names. Just thinking a little bit outside the box.
Okay. And when you actually came to that sales process, was your kind of instinct correct? And did the buyers look at that and give it a...
Yeah. All of that, the intellectual property we had in place, and the fact that we were not just an Amazon business, we were very diversified, and it was the products that we had which were unique, and the pipeline of products that we were working on as well that was interesting to them.
Okay, and I guess final question on this: what would you kind of recommend for brand owners now? Would you say follow the same process that you guys did, and is there anything that you would do differently?
Something I would do differently.
Just on the IP side.
On the IP side.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, I would certainly do the patent side of things, but just I wouldn't go for an international patent, depending on how strong it's going to be. It's just in a very expensive part of the process and could kill a business because of the cost involved. I've seen it on Dragon's Den. I've spent 100,000, 200,000 on patent protection, and it can get very expensive. So I think the trademark's more important than anything. So 100%, if I was to develop something myself again for Amazon, I would want to make sure I've got some IP in place. The trademark, design registration, and a patent granted or pending as well is something I would want, especially for one or two of the hero products, and then the other ones could be just design registration, just to give a further degree of protection on those as well.
Okay, and for someone that's maybe running this brand and they're not as versed as you in kind of product design and this kind of background, who do they do this with? Is it a do-it-yourself thing if you've got limited time and knowledge, or is it hiring lawyers, or what's the process?
Well, I didn't do any of it myself because it's not my expertise. And I know there are people who will do it to try and save some cost. But when you want something, I would want something done right. It's knowing who to trust, I suppose, when it comes to protecting your idea. Who do you talk to? And I ended up working with a patent lawyer that actually was a friend of my sister's. So, it's someone I could trust. And it may have cost me a little bit more than using another IP firm, but I knew I could trust them. because they were a friend of my sister, so they had my interest at heart as well. So I personally, if I do anything like this again, I would use an IP lawyer to make sure it's done right.
Okay, makes sense. I want to talk now about geography. Could you just talk through through the life cycle of the business, which countries were, the main markets for Collapse?
So the number one was the UK for obvious reasons. That's where we started, and that's where we could engage with the community. You could go camping with them. The influencers were all here in the UK. Prior to Brexit, any stock, we most of our sales started to go through FBA. So stock would go into Amazon's warehouse in the UK, and then that got filtered into Europe. We to grow those FBA sales in Europe, we actually had to get ourselves VAT registered in a number of countries throughout Europe. You're probably familiar with that, but that is quite a painful process in itself. And so we did that, and that was prior to Brexit. And then Brexit kicked in. So Europe was growing. Brexit kicked in, and suddenly we actually had most of our stock on the water, if I'm perfectly honest, and heading towards the UK. So we actually had to ship stock into Europe from the UK and pay double duty. So we paid it coming in, and we had to pay it going into Europe. The whole, Europe was growing. 100% that was growing. Germany particularly was growing, and we knew there was an opportunity to really grow that business. But Brexit made it much harder. America, we had started to grow as well, only with like the water carriers. But so that was proving a bit more difficult because obviously it's further away. It's just a more complicated country to try and tackle. But we knew there was a big opportunity there. When you look at the scales on sales on other products, and then again, I've touched on Asia before, but it wasn't an area we considered until we launched that product on Kickstarter, and that we sold that product into Japan initially, and we actually a large distributor in Japan picked up on the brand and ordered our water carrier actually, and because they're heavily followed, the Japanese market and this particular company, they're also a retailer, is followed by a lot of like Korea, India, Thailand, China, all over Taiwan. So our product was suddenly in the spotlight because of this distributor, and that just ballooned from there with this one product. Just with that one product, but then they started to take on some of the other products as well. So, but that was purely all through distributors. UK and Europe was Amazon, Shopify, our own website, and we had two distributors, one in the UK and one a sister company of the UK company in Holland. So, but they had only a handful of products because we just restricted what they could sell.
Okay. Could you just say at a super high level kind of what the percentage split was in terms of revenue between the main geographies?
I would say so the UK was probably, let's have a think about this, probably 40%, maybe I would say 50%, and then Asia I would say was 30%, and Europe and say America was 20%.
Okay. Do you think, if Brexit hadn't happened, the Europe piece of the pie would have continued to grow and maybe got closer to 50%, or what size?
Yeah, 100%. And I do know that the guys who bought the business, that is one area that has really grown since they took over the business, is Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an area where they saw potential.
One other question I have on this is there a certain size that you think you should get to, only focusing on the kind of home market before adding the complexity and, juggling the extra balls of going international?
Obviously, for me, prior to Brexit, it was easier to sell into Europe. Obviously, we had to get the VAT registered and put in place. But
to clarify, that is just on Amazon, right?
Sorry, that's just Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but given what's happened with Brexit, I would focus initially on growing that UK market probably for a year or two, and then look at that stepping into Europe. Now I know, again, just from one of my source of clients who now deals with that Amazon guy, that we now ship stock into a warehouse in Europe, and I think people have found their feet and found a way to make it work. So I would be tapping into those sort of contacts to see how we would tackle. But Europe, it'd be UK, Europe, certainly for me, and then America. Our product, I would say, we had other products in the pipeline that were more suitable for the American market. They were much bigger. They want big things bigger. But this particular client, her product is very successful in the States, so we are shipping stuff into the States, and it all goes. I don't know if you're probably aware that Amazon Global Logistics want to do all the shipping now. So we a lot of the shippings we do now from China are through Amazon Global Logistics, and they just ship it directly into their warehouse using their own vessels and whatever. So that's how it works now. So it's changed quite a bit in the time I've sold my business. So I'd have a lot to learn, but and this Amazon guy that I dealt with would know exactly what to do. So I wouldn't be too worried about that if I decide to take on that next product if I do it.
And in terms of that international kind of expansion, do you recommend taking that approach of using something like Amazon, where it kind of shortcuts a lot of the learnings and headaches to get into new markets? Yeah,
definitely. I think if you're trying to do that yourself through your own website and that, I think it's very difficult, or even just finding the right distribution partner. We spent a long time prior to the Amazon taking off trying to find the right partners, and it's not easy. You direct to consumer is the way it's going, and that is what consumers want. They want to be dealing with the brand directly. That's my belief. So I would think Amazon is the way to do that. It's a quick way to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Can we kind of move forward now and talk through the kind of exit process? So you talked about it at a high level before. You had some offers, worked with Tao and Harnbeck, got better offers and kind of negotiated from then. What was the entire kind of timeline of that entire process to sell?
From getting the offers?
Correct, yeah. So first kind of interest, and then negotiation and exit.
Right, okay. So the initial interest was in January. So that's when I had this one company. It was actually the company who I sold to in the end. That was the initial interest, the first company that approached me. And I put them off until the summertime. So then I spoke to them again. They had an offer. And then at the same time, I started to look at a few others. And that's when I had 4 offers. So we were then into September. Then I approached Tal. He put it out to a number of companies and contacts, and I would say that process was during October, November, when come back. I spoke to some of those companies that were interested, and then we got it down. Obviously, we had 10 offers down the table, but there was 2 that stood out because I wanted to sell the limited company as opposed to sell the IP, the brand, for tax reasons. So where one of the offers on the table didn't want to do that, so they would have had to raise their offers substantially for me to have the same value out of it. So there was these 2 that were very much at the same level. I went to see them both in London. One of them was a German. They're actually originally from Germany, but they had an office in London. And I had a preference to go with the company, the one company I went with in the end, because they just seemed keener. They were, I just liked the setup, and I also wanted my team, to be included in the deal, so they were secured, and that's what we got with the deal, and for me it was like, okay, you've offered that. You're going to go through due diligence, which started basically mid-December. So you have heads of terms and all that, and then you go through the due diligence, and that was quite a painful process, if I'm perfectly honest, because you're trying to run a business at the same time, and we were about to ship 6 containers from China before Chinese New Year. So that was all happening. This was coming into our, we're growing and growing. This is coming into our busy season the next year. And I'm being asked all these questions from when the business started in 2005. And I'm sometimes my memory's not the best. So I'm having to go back a long time to think who worked for me and what they did. So it wasn't just all about collapse. It was the whole business. They wanted to know about everything about the business. So, so that started mid-December. And they knew there was someone else interested at the same sort of around the same sort of level. So I, said, listen, whatever comes out of due diligence, good or positive or negative. So this is the final price. So if it's coming, the value looks like it could be more than that, we'll keep it at the price we've agreed. If it's going to be slightly less, we're keeping it at that price. So that's what I wanted. I went for a high level. I wanted as much on the upfront as possible, and then we had a 3-year earn-out from it as well. That's what I focused on, and it was end of January when we finally got everything agreed, and we're actually coming up to our big consumer show in NEC in February. So all that was happening at the same time as stock shipping from China. And I'll be very honest, I nearly threw in the towel at one stage thinking this is the most stressful thing I've ever done. And if you're going to keep asking me questions, I'm just going to walk away from it, and you're not going to get the business, and I'll just keep growing it myself. But you have to keep thinking what's at the end of this, that potentially if this comes off, this is going to be life-changing. So you persevere. And it came off in the end.
What was the timeline on that kind of final bit? So you said you started the due diligence process in January? Is that correct?
The due diligence started mid-December, and we finished it at the end of January. We were hoping to finish it by mid-January, but end of January. And then we completed, I think it was around middle of February. When the money and all was exchanged and all that, and the other company who were also very interested were actually very disappointed that I said, well, if for some reason it doesn't happen, we will look at yourselves then. But obviously it all happened, and that was it.
Okay, so in terms of total timeline, kind of marketing was done September, October, offers October, November, and then closing February.
Yeah.
Okay, so very stressful kind of 6-month period. But
Yeah. We're over Christmas, everything. You're getting lawyers sending you things over Christmas. You can't believe that you're getting all these questions over Christmas, but you're thinking, I've got to make this happen in time. So you do work over that Christmas period.
And I just want to talk now about the earn-out. So you mentioned there kind of, a 3-year process. What was that like? So, walk me through from, February, March time. What happens next once you've got that kind of initial chunk of cash coming in from the buyer?
Well, I was. They wanted to retain me on a consultancy basis, so I was retained, and then we had like a 3 months notice either way if we wanted to terminate. So I was retained primarily, obviously, just sweeping up things that they may have missed in that, and to do to be still almost the face of the brand at those shows. So the February show, the October show, and then it got to the second year, and they decided to terminate that arrangement because I think they thought they had enough information from me, but they wanted to keep me as the face of the brand for doing the shows, and I decided, because I'd lost control of that, and I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't like the way that they had managed the business to that point. I decided I didn't have control of it, so I couldn't influence things too much. So I decided it was best for both of us if I actually stepped away completely from it. That's what I decided to do. So it's I still follow what they're doing, but it's not been run the way I thought it would be run.
Are there any specifics you would be willing to kind of go into about, that? So like how things are not being run, how you would be running it?
I think the problem is, especially with a lot of these aggregators, they bought up a lot of brands, and I think particularly I would say with our brand, they underestimated the complexities of it, and that was one of the reasons I developed the business in that way, to make it difficult to replicate. So I think they underestimated the manufacturing side, the way I had set that up, and the range of products and the complexities of the products, and how they work across different caravans, different motorhomes. You need to be very close to the community. So I think they underestimated that. Even though they took my team across, they actually got rid of. There was 3 of them they took across, and they got rid of the main designer and my manager in China as well. So they were left with just one person. So there was a lot of knowledge in that they just got rid of. When I was gone, when they were gone, there was just one person that just didn't have that knowledge and was just spread too thinly. So the priorities for that just changed, and they just focused on and just maintaining the existing products and trying to sell those, as opposed to growing the business through NPD, new product development, and engaging with the community.
Have they managed to grow the business from a financial kind of standpoint?
No.
Okay.
I've seen the figures the last 2 years, and the sales are down. Not substantially, but they are down. And I will get the final set of figures now come March. But it doesn't surprise me. And I suppose my advice to anyone considering this: focus on that upfront, which is what I was told to do. Focus on the upfront, and anything else that comes out is a bonus. But yeah, whether it's been deliberately done like that, I don't think so. I think it's just they're spread too thinly. These aggregators are spread far too thinly to manage so many different brands.
Oh, for sure. We've done work with a couple of them, and I think, on the marketing side, I can't speak about the kind of product side, but they're, stretched very thin and often, not as switched on as they think they are.
So I've built up a lot of knowledge there, and it's very difficult to pass that knowledge on. And I was pretty much 24/7 on that business, and the guys who bought the business, the working world today is very much sort of 9 to 5 switch off, and nice long holidays. It's a different beast. It's a very different beast to how we, when it's a small business, and most of these are small businesses, you're on it 110%.
Yeah. How do you feel as kind of a business owner? So, obviously on the one hand, you got the financial benefit of the exit, and, there's probably other benefits too, maybe regard to your health, but how does it feel kind of on a personal level, looking at, what was your baby, kind of going backwards a bit?
Yeah, it's disappointing to see how I was expecting this thing to fly. It depends how you look at it. You could say, well, if it was flying, I could have actually made more money because you're seeing it fly. But I'll be perfectly honest, I did exit the bit. I've had a lot of bad luck over the years, highs and lows in this business. And I think I had the first bit of luck there when I sold that business. I just happened to latch on to this at the right time. And I didn't get too greedy. I thought, there's only so much money you need, and it was life changing. So I thought I'm going to exit, and I know if I exit that business today, at that level I was at that time, I would not have earned the money that I have. So for once in my life, I got it right.
Was that kind of peak aggregator? Was it at that time?
I think that was peak aggregate, 100%. It was at its peak, and they were buying up brands all over the place. So, and you're probably well aware that some of those big aggregators have failed as well. And I'm surprised. I know the two brothers that basically took over, that ran this business that bought my brand. I know they're no longer involved in the business. The backers behind them have taken control of the whole thing, so it's still going, the business. I'm surprised it's still going, if I'm perfectly honest. but especially when I've seen like some of the big ones, other ones who've gone and been swallowed up. Yeah, I was hoping, they would actually be bought out, because if they had been bought out, I had an agreement in place that I would actually get X amount for if it was sold in year one, or sold in year two, or sold in year three. There was a sliding scale, and I was hoping that it would almost get bought out again by someone else, one of the bigger aggregators, but that hasn't happened.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for founders that are kind of looking to exit? And I guess maybe outside of the aggregator model, so not being purchased by aggregators or not having them in the process, what advice would you have for founders?
To exit a business?
Yeah, or just on the process, how they feel afterwards, whatever it is, but just that entire kind of...
Well, for me, I never really knew how I was going to exit this business, because I knew the business was me. I've seen some of my other Sourcer clients bring in, very good management, and they sort of took a back seat. I like to have control of things, so I like doing things myself. I'm a bit of a perfectionist.
Do you think that's an issue? And if you did it again, would you kind of look to sell earlier on, or build to sell maybe?
I would probably I would try and build it so that when I would go to sell it, it could be quite easily added on. Whether it's this range of product very easily bolted onto another business. It didn't rely so much on the founder. Even when it comes down to the manufacturing, they found that very difficult how we had set it up. And I had set it up deliberately like that to make it difficult for people to copy the product. They couldn't just go to a factory and say, can you make that for me? Because it's not that easy. So I did that deliberately to make it very difficult to copy, and also to control the quality. So, that I know since then, they've just got the one factory making everything, or buying all the bits in. So they just put one purchase order with that one factory, but it's caused problems. I know it's caused quality problems, but that's what I would say. If you're going to exit, I would certainly use someone like TAL, because of the reach that they've got, the contacts that they've got. It's not something I sort of thought about before, but I would certainly, if I thought I had a business, I was building it and thinking about an exit strategy, I'd probably consult TAL and say, look, I'm at this stage with my business. What do you think? Should I keep going? Or do you think it's ready now to package it up and offer to some of your contacts? So, everyone's got their expertise, and that's something I sort of learned over the years, not to employ all this expertise, but to outsource the expertise. And that's what I did, from my finance to my Amazon to my warehousing. We were a very small, tight team. The only bit that we really had in-house was the product development. Although we did outsource some product development, but we had, the idea generation was just in-house amongst three of us.
And just on that, do you think that's what brands should be doing, is outsourcing, marketing,
yeah,
all these kind of other pieces, and just product in-house? And I guess, your kind of relationships with manufacturing and logistics, right, as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Just work to your strengths and outsource the rest of it, because we could work from home. We didn't have to have an office, employing people is not easy these days. They want, I think that they want nice holidays and, work 9 to 5 and unfortunately, I'm, some businesses are like that, but we're not like that. So I found it easier just to outsource, and I would do that again. No problem. I would definitely outsource again.
Okay. And then just in terms of, this exit process and advice for founders, are there any kind of red flags or things that they should look out for in the process now? So, they've prepared, they've gone and spoke to someone like TAL. What next, and any kind of advice on that bit?
Any red flags? Well, I would probably say, if you're going to talk to a broker, talk to several brokers and to get some idea on percentages, because I had no idea what was a fair percentage. But when you start thinking about the numbers and what potentially you can sell this for, you have to sort of you do the maths on that. I think, well, actually, if it's up at that percentage, they're actually going to take a big chunk of the business, which you've just spent the last 5 years, 10 years building. Is that fair? But at the same time, you have to just recognise, they've got their contacts too, so and expertise. So, yeah, I would say just do your research. Do your research and talk to if you are going to go down that route. But it's very easy said than done, because you're so engrossed in the business, trying to sort of think about, who you're going to sell to, how you're going to sell. It's not an easy thing to do. So I never knew how I was going to do it. And it just happened. If I hadn't fallen in on the Amazon side of things, I don't know, I'll be perfectly honest, the business wouldn't have succeeded anyhow. It would have failed. It was Amazon that actually made that business succeed in the end.
I want to talk now about the future and life post-exit. So my question to you is, how did you adjust going from, what must have been a very kind of manic, certainly the last 6 months, right, must have been crazy at the business. And before that, you're a business owner working, 24/7 pretty much. How did you adjust going from that to retired life, as it were?
I still obviously retain the Sourceit side, so I knew I had an element there to keep me busy. Having said that, I don't do a lot on that side of things. I probably do an hour or two a week, but I was still doing a bit of work with the guys who bought the business for the first 12 months. I bought the property I'm in now. I bought that, and I didn't move into it straight away. I spent 12 months renovating it, not myself, but obviously I got people to renovate it. So that was very consuming, but in an enjoyable way too. But I was at the same time I actually bought another property directly opposite, all in the same village. Literally sort of it's like 2-minute walk between my old house, and I'm directly across from the other place I bought. So I decided, I've always been interested in property, so we had to. Was it last year? Yeah, no, the previous year we sort of moved from the old house into this cottage we bought for 2 months while this was finished, and then moved into here. And then I've just spent the last 12 months getting that renovated. So I'm pretty much done on the property side of things. But I'm going to probably. I've always had an interest in furniture, cabinet making, and wood turning. So I'm going to explore that as a way of sort of keeping me busy, and whether I make a bit of money from it or not, maybe doing some craft fairs, may consider developing another product. Whether it's in the camping world, I could do that now after 3 years. I had 3 years I couldn't do anything in that industry, so I could do something now from February. So I may, with the contacts I've got and the influencers, some of those are interested in potentially developing a product, may go into that. But I'll be perfectly honest, I feel like I want to move on to something new and different. And the furniture thing is something I wanted to do as a kid. So I think I'm probably going to just focus on that maybe and see where it takes me. As long as I'm kept busy for, I don't know, mornings, every morning during the week or something, apart from the weekends, and then I've got my afternoon to do something else. You need to keep busy. I think I'm an ideas person, so, and I want to help other entrepreneurs as well. So, like yourself, I'm looking to do a podcast, potentially working with a guy who used to work with me. And maybe working with universities, and maybe just sharing that expertise and that, and if it can help some of them, great. So that's I'm considering doing that as well.
Very nice. So you're going to stay very busy for the next few years?
Certainly for another 10 years or something like that. Yeah. And then at some stage, you'll have to sort of. But this is where the furniture, the wood turning, it's something I could continue doing. If I can live that long, into my 70s, into my 80s, because that's the type of thing people do. To take up a hobby. So I'm not. I won't be sitting around twiddling my thumbs. Put it that way.
No, I think that this is good advice, right? Because I know a few people that have kind of sat around, gone on holidays afterwards, perpetual holidays maybe, and they've started to lose the plot a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm the type. I like going away on holidays, but I haven't had too many holidays since selling the business, and I suppose because I never really had many holidays when I had the business. So if I get one or two holidays now a year, I'm quite happy, or a long weekend or something like that. So for me, the stress is gone now since I sold the business. So I'm just. Yeah, it's good to have a bit of stress in your life.
David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If there's anyone in space that wants to kind of get in contact with you or follow along, maybe they've got questions, maybe they've got a brand that they want your advice on, how can they find you and where should they reach out?
Yeah, so I've got the website, Sourceit, which is sorcit.co.uk. They could also email me if they want to, david@sourceit. So very happy to help people. If they've got any questions, point them in the right direction. I've done that even for Sourceit clients or Sourceit inquiries. I guess if I can't help them, I'll say, well, speak to so and so, and I'm happy to do that. I don't look to make money from anything like that. I just want to help people, to be honest, because I know how difficult it is to launch products and build a business. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to sort of connect that way too.
Perfect. Okay, and we will put those links in the description below this video. Thank you so much for your time. It was great to kind of walk through your journey. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Jordan.